I can't sing.
How about a song, Jess?
Chris, can you sing?
No.
No.
They put me underground for a reason.
I told you he was on the ground. I told you that. You guys learned. You guys
Billy
learned.
must have put a floor over his head.
He said he was on the ground. He admitted it. I knew it.
We were talking about the pit filler.
All right, all right.
It was like when they have microphones and stuff under there, they could stay under there, we could hear them.
But it's essentially the same amount.
We good? Okay. Everybody, can we stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, board president to advise members of the audience that they may address the board regarding agenda items after the superintendent's report. Only those members whose names and addresses are listed on the sign-in sheet available prior to the start of the meeting will be recognized during new business. The chairperson will limit discussions of any item by the public to 3 minutes in order for the board to expeditiously conduct its business. Mr. Dolan.
All right, just very briefly, good evening, everyone. We are looking in the next several meetings to bring the kids back and celebrate what we do here in East Islip. But this will be after we finish the budget cycle. And to anybody that keeps asking the question, we're back to school pretty much business as usual. We are still limiting some of the outside activities, just because we want to make sure that we get all of our internal activities in, because things that didn't get in the fall, we're trying to squeeze some in the spring. But I'm happy to report that over the last several weeks, we've seen school looking more and more normal every day, and we are very excited about that. And tonight, I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Harrison to do his second budget presentation, and I want to thank Mr. Harrison and his staff publicly. Let's give him a nice round of applause.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank the Board of Education, Superintendent, and my colleagues, as well as the staff that helped put the presentation together. And I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the budget with everyone tonight. So this is our second budget presentation, second of 3 presentations. The format is pretty much the same as you've seen in the past. Just a word of revenue. We're going to talk about state aid, property taxes, a slight adjustment on the revenue budget. Then we'll go into our accomplishments and initiatives, as well as review the appropriations budget draft number 1, talk about the capital reserve, and finally finish up with the budget timeline. So this is a snapshot of the governor's proposal. I will mention that the state's fiscal year end is ending tonight. The budget is due April 1st. However, it doesn't appear that we'll have an on-time budget from New York State. Hopefully by the 14th meeting, April 14th, we'll have updated numbers on an approved budget at the state level and how it impacts the rest of the budget here at East Islip. However, the numbers as they stand are the same as last presentation, just a few highlights. Foundation aid is going up at the minimum of 3%, or $820,000. You see from the chart that foundation aid is our major contributor of state aid. This category will never rise dramatically because in the eyes of the state, we're fully funded, actually overfunded. So if the formula was allowed to run, the state aid calculation would be much less for East Islip. However, based upon hold harmless agreements at the state, it'll never be less than the prior year. I include universal pre-K on this slide because it's a lot of interest to the people of East Islip, but it's not part of the general fund budget. However, funding is remaining the same as it was the prior year at $634,500, which supports 117 full-time students in the UPK program. The next highlight I have here is on building aid. When the governor does their budget at the state level, they don't have all the up-to-date information, strange as it might seem, in this category. So while they're forecasting a decrease in this category, when I built the revenue budget, I actually had this category increasing by almost $2 million because some of the projects that you've seen undertaken in prior years are now coming to a close and state aid will start to be paid in the next school year. So overall, state aid is going up 2.49%, or $965,000. Okay, this screen here is the original tax cap levy calculation that was presented in the prior board meeting. And you see it's going up 1.47%. Bless you. Bless you. A lot of pressure. So this has now changed, and the reason it's changed, and you'll see it on the next slide, is that I've been in touch with the town of Islip regarding the pilot payments that are going to be expected for next year. Now, there is a property on the pilot tax rolls that is in transition. Next year is going to be a transition year, and then the following year, it's going to convert to the tax rolls. So in the initial version of the tax levy calculation, I had a slight decrease in the the pilot payment of $65,000. So what happens with pilot payments, if they're going up in a particular year as compared to the current year, that reduces your ability to raise taxes. And the same thing is true on the other side. If pilot payments are going down, that increases your ability to raise taxes. So the 1.47 was the percentage supporting the budget in the prior version. Now you'll see that based upon my discussions with the town of Islip, I found out that that property actually has a new assessed valuation going into next year, which is quite a bit higher than what was supporting the pilot payments. So now the pilot payments are anticipated to go up to $940,000. And the inverse relationship means the tax levy is going to go down by that same amount. So the cap right now is at 0.93% for next year. So just be cautioned that in the following year, 23-24, when that pilot payment comes off the books, that's going to add 1.2% to this calculation, all other things being equal. So before we start doing any other calculation, our starting point is 1.2% for the 23-24 school year. So this chart you've seen in the past. It shows that right now the budget that's being presented tonight has a 0.93% tax levy increase. And if you go over time, the past 5 years, you see that we've used only a portion of the allowable levy during that time frame. I believe it's like 2.5% on average. I'm sorry, 2.5% would have been the increase on average if we went to the cap every year. You see we're quite a bit below that each and every year. I believe at 0.79% on average for 5 years. So the past this year and potentially next year, we're planning on being at the cap. There was a time frame going back to 14-15 where we're consistently below the cap. The top black line is the allowable levy, and the bottom line is what we were at each particular year. So since this formula builds upon itself year after year, this graph represents what we could have taxed to if we stayed at the cap each year going back to 15-16. So our levy at this point could have been as high as almost $82 million. But based upon what we've done in actuality, our levy for next year is at $73.6 million. So I revised this chart as well, which reflects an average homeowner increases at $72 for the year. I believe that works out to about 20 cents a day. Again, this chart's been revised for the most recent pilot information and tax levy revision. Close to 60% of our revenue is coming from the tax base, with another 33% coming from state aid. The district is appropriating reserves of $5.7 million, which supports the budget with 5%, and the aforementioned pilot payment supports about 1% of the budget at $940,000. So the next two screens are the same that you've seen in the past. I'm not really going to go through each and every one right now. You can see what's there. As I go through the appropriation budgets, I'll pull some of these in to highlight what's in the budget. You know, I would say from the instructional support area, all the positions that are currently in the budget funded by grant funds in the 21-22 school year are now being supported in the general fund with their benefits for roughly $1 million. Okay, on the salary and benefits slide, you see it's going up at 2.65%. That's brought into, that's made up of our, obviously, salary and benefits. On the benefits side, medical expenses, premiums are anticipated to increase 11 to 12%, which contributes about $1.3 million of that $1.5 million increase. In addition, in that number are our TRS and ERS increases. They're actually going in opposite direction. The TRS is increasing to 10.5% from 9.8% this year, and the ERS is actually going down from 16.2% to 11.6%. And both of those, the way the math works out, is actually a wash. So the dollar impact from these changes is a wash on both, when you bring both of those together. So going to salaries and talking about instructional and teachers and administrators, we have retirees, which have been subtracted from the budget, replaced with incoming lower salaried employees for next year. In addition, I just talked about the positions that were brought into the budget that were previously covered by grants. That's in the instructional line. Teachers and administrators. Let's just see. We were also adding new positions to the budget going into next year, so that's all in those lines. If you're looking at the custodial line, you'll notice that that's going up as well. That's having to do with an additional maintenance mechanic / grounds position that we're anticipating hiring going to next year, which will be in support of our new maintenance barn that will be constructed. So on the, on this slide, you'll see that the budget increase is 3.07% or $3.7 million. Some of the things included on the equipment line would be equipment for our fitness room, a work van for the new maintenance mechanic, some buildings and grounds equipment. We have bleachers that are being purchased. In addition, we're looking at a new sound system for the high school, as well as a pit filler for the orchestra area at the high school stage. So all those items are contributing to that increase. The textbook line, which is also increasing roughly $284,000. There's an initiative for a new program costing roughly $300,000. That is the literacy program at the elementary schools. In addition, the middle schools are adopting a new math program. So all those items are built into the textbook increase. Moving down to tuition, we are seeing an increase there based upon projected enrollment at special ed programs at BOCES. So we've included in that number as well. So again, overall, the budget's going up by 3.07%, which is $3.7 million. So the next two slides just take each of the numbers you've seen on the previous slide and divide them by the total to give you an idea of how much of the budget is being utilized in those areas. So in the areas of salary and benefits, they remain relatively stable at 73% of the total budget. As you would expect on the next page, with increased emphasis on spending and textbooks, those items are increasing more than you normally would see. So equipment lines increasing as a percentage of the budget, 1.24% compared to 0.87% last year. And as you see, the textbook line is almost doubling as a percentage of the budget from 0.2 to 0.42%. Also on the ballot for the May 17th vote is a capital reserve proposition. Just to give a little history, the voters approved this capital reserve on May 17th, 2016. We couldn't fund or establish this reserve without voter approval. The approval was to fund up to $2 million per year, up to 10 years, not to exceed $20 million in funding. We have used this reserve in the past. These are monies that we already have on hand from previous surpluses, and currently the balance in that reserve is $5.9 million. So we're also required to seek voter approval to spend this amount. So that's why we have it up on the ballot this coming May. And you'll see some of the project scope that is currently included in that plan. We want to upgrade the electrical across the district so we can have air conditioners in each classroom. We have more bathrooms to renovate. We're looking to create a bus loop at the high school. There's quite a bit of traffic if you're ever there at dismissal, so we're looking, or arrival. We're looking to make that a more efficient situation. There's more renovations due at the theater and music area at the high school, as well as paving repairs throughout the district, including the RCK playground. So this money requires voter approval to spend from the reserve. Without that voter approval, the money would just have to sit there until we have an opportunity to ask voter approval again in the future. So with the 0.93% increase in the tax levy that's now supporting the first draft of the budget, the past 5-year average is 0.786% on the tax levy increase. On average, we could have brought this up as almost 2.5%. So it's a fraction of what the allowable levy would have supported in the past years. You also see the proposed levy at $73.6 million, the budget at $124.7 million, and the amount that's being appropriated for a fund balance of $5.7 million. So our next meeting is April 14th. We hopefully expect to have state aid information, so the presentation is going to change quite a bit from a revenue perspective. The April 14th is where we talk about the budget again for the third time, and it's budget adoption as well on that date. May 3rd, we review the budget again at the budget hearing, and finally the 17th is the budget vote and election. So at this point, if there are any questions from the board.
Mr. Harrison, thank you once again for your budget presentation. I know it takes a lot of work to put this together, and thank you for all you've done, you and your staff. Thank you. 2 questions, and you may have touched on it, but both are going up $500,000. Is that because of additional placements? Is the aid formula change? Why is that going up so much?
Each year when we plan the budget, we sit with the planned attendees of the BOCES program on the special ed side, so that's the actual placements we expect to go to BOCES next year based upon special ed projections.
Okay, and as far as,
And I want to add also on the BOCES side, based upon all the technology that we have in the district now, that also includes an additional technician for support of the technology staff.
now we're taking almost $6 million out of reserves to support the budget, correct?
Correct.
Now, I remember in years past, the state frowns upon such a large percentage of the budget being from reserves. Is there a certain percentage that's standard? I mean, we used to have $2 million from the reserves, now up to $6.
Well, I think the real concern is sustainability. You know, if you put $6 million towards the budget this year, all things being equal, you would have to have that same funding source at some point in time. If you had to access those funds would deplete over time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Harrison, you mentioned regarding state aid, with the 17 students with the UPK program,
I'm
that
sorry?
the aid would be able to support 17 students?
117, I'm sorry if I misspoke.
No, thank you.
Do we know how many kids apply for the pre-K?
The applications are due, say, 14th or something like that. I don't know exactly if I can get that.
I know we've always talked about maybe, you know, if there's only a few kids and not that many kids, maybe making it so you pre-K is free for all these types of residents. I don't know what the cost would be, but maybe if we could see how many kids, it might not be possible this year, but I know we're always looking at that. You know, I'd hate to have a few kids not be able to attend because they don't win the lottery. Well, the 117 do, but it's not that many, but maybe we could just keep an eye on that.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Harrison, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Is that all, Mr. Bowles?
No. Just to recap, I mean, as we were asked at the last meeting, you know, there's a lot of talk about cost per student, and you know, there are many different ways to figure that out, because not all students are the same. You know, the easiest one is take the budget and divide it by the number of students, but schools in the last 20 years have been asked to provide services in what I'd call in a triage, proactive way, because all the research tells us that if we can help kids get a good educational base, even if they have certain special needs, they can grow up to be extremely productive members of society. And like everything else, you know, there's the academic portion and the altruistic portion of what schools do, but there is a business side. And if you make the investment in the services that children need, it benefits society in the long run. You know, when you look at this budget, as Mr. Harrison said, it's really, you know, he never liked to correct Mr. Harrison on the mathematics, but it's a shade under 20 cents a day. It's full of some really, really robust academic programs, particularly in the area of literacy. We're going to be bringing the list teachers here to explain that, because we know reading is the foundation of everything we do. Again, all the research shows the more you read, the better you're equipped to handle the challenges you face in life. You know, when you look at this, we also have a good chunk of money in the budget, you know, upwards of $1 million to replace aging equipment, facilities, everything from, you know, finally having pit fillers at the high school to finally, you know, fixing up our trucks, because our maintenance barn will be finished. I'll applaud the team and Mr. Harrison. You know, we went out to bid on a maintenance barn last year, and it came in over budget because of the circumstances of the supply chain and COVID. I believe we got a number about $1.6 million. The architects suggested we wait. That number came down to approximately 1.1. Don't worry, folks, it's all bond money. We're not asking you for more money. But, you know, it's just an example of we are making fiscally responsible decisions to invest long-term in the district. I kiddingly, only half kiddingly, said to the board the other day, your superintendent had a backup plan if the bond didn't pass. You know, we had a capital reserve of $6 million, and we had $20 million worth of roofs that probably would have been condemned around 23, 24. You supported us, you passed the bond. The architects will be here to explain where we're at. We're in the final phases of it. We are stretching the money, and we're actually getting more than we anticipated in the bond, which brings me to the capital reserve. The capital reserve was our backup plan in case the bond failed. You know, if you want to judge your superintendent, that was not the best backup plan in the world, but thank God we didn't need it. But please understand this. The capital reserve account is money we have sitting in the bank. It's your money. We've said this over and over again. We had a list of $79.6 million worth of capital improvements that this district needed, including over $20 million worth of roofs. That money is sitting there, and we have a list of almost $20 million worth of work that doesn't all have to be done at once. But we're not coming up with new projects. We are continuing to chip away at that list. So in the spring, we are putting up with the budget a capital reserve vote. If that vote passes, if your yes vote, we'll lay the groundwork for air conditioning in every classroom. It'll finish all the paving of our parking lots. It'll finish the bathroom project because some of those things were taken out of the original bond. We are not creating or looking for new work. We are not asking you for more money. We're simply asking you to allow us to invest the money that you gave us in capital projects. So yes, the capital reserve will go up. We hope you see the value in supporting it. And I think it's time to go back to you, Mr. Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Okay, public comments on agenda items only.
Excuse me, what do you mean by agenda items?
Items on the agenda that we'll be voting on.
The agenda is where, up there?
The printed out is available online prior. We're not voting on the budget tonight, if you have a budget question. So, anything else that, I see that you signed in, we could talk about after the meeting? Do you have any comments on anything that we're going to be voting on?
That's it over there?
I don't know, I can't see what you're seeing.
Well, how would we know?
It was available online prior to the meeting.
How much the prior?
Excuse me?
How long prior?
How long prior? I don't know, when does it get put out? 24 hours.
24 hours.
Yes.
So yes.
Okay, certified personnel. Be resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education approves the resignations, terminations, leaves of absence, position abolitions, employment appointments, tenure appointments, and salary changes in accordance with applicable provisions of education law and civil service law as cited in the certified personnel attachments. Take a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Be resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education approves the resignations, terminations, leaves of absence, position abolitions, employment appointments, tenure appointments, and salary changes in accordance with applicable provisions, of education law, civil service law, as cited in the non-certified personnel attachments. Take a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda. Does anybody want anything removed from the consent agenda? Okay, be resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, recommends the Board of Education approves the consent agenda items 9.1 through 9.21 in accordance with the action presented for each item. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consent.
Be resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education approves the attached list of appropriation changes for the 21-22 school year. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Be resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education accepts the donation of the attached list of equipment and tools from James Romeo. These items will be a wonderful addition to the automotive technology program at the high school and will be used by the students attending the program. The estimated value of these items is $3,600. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Romeo, for your very generous donation. It's always great when people can give back to the school, especially this great program that we have here, the automotive technology program. So thank you very much, Mr. Romeo. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any old business? Any old business? No old business. Mr. Montori's not here. Okay. New business. Big congratulations out to our music department, staff, students. What an amazing show. Mr. Neske, you're here, so thank you personally. Thank you very much for all the work you put into that. You, Ms. Affelt, and the entire staff that worked on that, and the kids were just awesome. If you were lucky enough to be able to go see it, it was an outstanding show. Just the talent that we have here is just amazing. So thank you to all the people who did the hard work behind the scenes, the set, our musicians, everybody. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure going. You know, our sports teams are great, and it's great, you know, to go to the football game or the baseball game, but there's such a tremendous amount of pride, I know, as board members when we go to the play, and it's amazing how good it is and how great the kids and staff do. So thank you very much to our music department.
And the good news is the middle school play was equally as good as the high school
I
play.
missed it, I was away.
What?
I wish I could have gone to that one. We've been talking about that one too, I'm sure.
No, it means we just have, Mr. Neske has a lot to look forward to in the next few years, and Ms. Southall.
Okay, any other new business?
So I just had just two items. The Septo Craft Fair is coming up on the 23rd of April, and then the following day is the EJ Autism Jigsaw Run on the 24th. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Both great events. Anything else?
Can I?
Ms. Vecchio in a second, we're getting there. Okay. Stephanie?
Lisa Miller? Okay. Kenneth Lafayette?
Good evening, gentlemen. I was a little disappointed in your answer to the average per student. Mr. Harrison presented the figures. I was just going to condense version very quickly. 2013, 2014, we had 4,086 students, 109 million plus budget, or we were spending $26,832.94 per student. Forward us to 2021, 2022, we now have 3,358 students, a budget of 121 million plus, or we're spending $36,044.64 per student. Well, over 9 years, we have a 9,000 plus increase, or an average of 1,000 per student, or 99 cents a day, as reported. 5-year projection, that brings us up to $41,000 per student. I just wanted to bring that topic up, a little in numbers. I did want to start out by saying, Bolt of lightning? I went to the athletic fields in the back, and I'm very impressed with the renovations you did. Job well done. I praise you for what you did there. I speak to the school board and the homeowners who pay the school tax. I have learned that the school budget will pass so students can have sports, buses, and other necessities. Not having these necessities creates a negative impact on taxpayers. Today, both parents work and need these necessities to maintain work and school schedule and not impact their living standards, though. All taxpayers are entitled to know how much money they will need in future years to be a homeowner in East Islip. I request Mr. Harrison to do a predictive analytic school budget for calendar years ending 2024 through 2028, 5 years, presented exactly the same on pages 12 and 13 of the East Islip School Budget Presentation Number 1, and also per student course for the same years. And I request this to be answered and brought up in old business at the next budget meeting to discuss the impact on our living standards. My next question is, what is the process for the teacher's contract negotiation? What are the steps? What are the dates? Since our contract is expiring in June, I don't know whether it's already been a signed deal or so forth, but you could explain it to me so I can understand the steps and procedures and the dates that go with it.
Sure. Right now, we are starting formal negotiations with the teachers before the expiration of their contract. There is no deal at this point, but our lawyers for the union and lawyers for the district are talking, preliminary discussions. I mean, at some point, if there's no contract, then we could go to mediation. There's things that happen, but at this point, it's just the beginning. So there's no dates or formal things to talk about.
Because the only thing I could find out was an administrative contract, and there had to be specific dates. So, but has the school board done a feeler as to what does the community feel about this teacher's contract coming up and the expense? The teacher's contract has an automatic step and lane increases. Are the salary increases negotiable in the teacher's contract?
I believe everything is.
Okay. From what I read, the Tri-Borough Agreement and the Taylor Law gives the school administrators, you guys, the ability to say no to any salary increases in negotiations, all right, with the teachers union. This is needed so that the East Islip homeowners' living standards are not taken away and given to the teacher's contract, because none of us have an employment contract that I can go back to school and get an increase, and we do a lane. They've already got built-in increases. They don't need more with a salary. And I'm asking you to ask the community, put it out to them. What is their feelings? I appreciate you listening to me.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
Kenneth O'Rourke?
Good evening,
Good evening.
everybody. I have a question about this budget coming up. How is it affected by the coronavirus money we got last year? That's now paid in this budget. Whatever effect from it is in this budget. I don't see it in the budget. Can we get an addendum to the budget that shows how much is spent, budgeted for everything that resulted from that? And show whether it's paid for by defunding current things, or is it paid for by raising taxes?
Steve, is it possible to get those numbers? I mean, is it?
Those numbers will probably 10 years from now be mandatory, because the government's going to want to figure out what the total cost goes for history.
Like,
So we
we
might
got
as well dig them out now.
Some of the money as far as like for that reading program and things like that. Is there a way to figure out what money's still coming in from that's Corona related?
Well, the money coming in that's COVID-related is defined, and it's from 3 grants stemming back to the beginning of COVID, totaling about $5.4 million. As I indicated earlier, the budget that I put forth tonight includes about $1 million worth of expenditures that were previously paid for by the grant in the form of personnel and benefits. So that's a huge chunk of that right now. Some of that money has gone to reimburse the district for monies spent both in 1920 and 21, and others are going to pay for new initiatives that are in the current year's, not in the current year's budget, but to be expended this year. I can try to put together an analysis and share it with the board.
Mr. Harrison, try to put that together. Maybe we could do it during old business at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Jessica Carney?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, Ms. Klein.
Good evening. It's nice to be on this side of the podium. I haven't been here in a long time. So, my first question is budget related. I saw the projection for TRS and ARS. How is that going to impact this budget and going forward? I know we can't plan, but we need to plan long range. So I'm hoping the long range planning committee is robust, and maybe the capital project committee can then reevaluate the end of the capital budget and the wrap up, and maybe have input in that the proposal for that. But just my question is about the impact on the budget for the TRS and ERS.
Okay, the rates for both of those pension contributions are heading in opposite directions. However, when you apply that to the salary base for each of those types of employees, it actually comes out to a wash. So TRS is going up, ERS is going down, and the changes in both of those categories are relatively the same. So there's very little impact in this budget. To address your question about long-term planning, with your help in the past and the current board, we've established both TRS and ERS reserves that can help us offset any huge increases in either one of those pension contribution systems.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
And just wait, don't go anywhere, because, you know, but to piggyback on to what you said, I mean, listen, Steve just made a very good point. We created a safety net so we don't have to deal with wide springs or wide shifts in the economy. You know, you want life to sort of be like a merry-go-round where the horse goes up and down, up and down, up and down, but you don't get thrown off the horse. You know, long-range planning. Remember one of the first conversations I had with you, you know, you were very much a big proponent of trying to project out into the future budgetarily, but also in 2015, you know, remember, we didn't have smartboard and the kids didn't have computers. We were a district that was way behind where we should be. Hey, look, I'm polite when you talk, all right, please. So anyway, you know, we said the goal, we had projected that we would all have a computer in each kid's hand by 2025. You know, we were done in 2021. You know, Dr. Bells is chairing the new long-range planning committee. We had our first meeting. It was really just kind of a get to know you, but you know, we said to everybody, look, you have to have a plan for the next 10 years. Not the next 3 weeks, but the next 10 years, not year to year. And as far as capital improvements, that's kind of dovetailing together, because we already know, you know, we will leave for the future generations things that need to be done here. If you really want air conditioning in your classrooms and you want split systems, can't afford to do that now. We can do window units, but the electric work that we're doing maybe the next bond in 2035 or 2034, the windows are going to have to be fixed. We're already thinking, you know, long-term investing in what our schools are going to look like. So it's nice to see you, and it's, you know, it's kind of nice that you came up, because that was one of the things, one of my first and fondest memories here were, we don't want to be this volatile, crazy place where you're getting thrown. We're trying to keep the increases reasonable. We want to reinvest in what we do. And quite honestly, schools are being asked to do an awful lot of things for kids that we didn't have to do. Now, you know, this is my 38th year, but the last 10 years alone, and it's not a bad thing, because if we can help kids develop appropriately, they're less likely to face issues in life where the government has to, you know, try to pick up the tab for them. So it's good to see you, Jess.
Good to see all of you. Thank you for what you do, especially you five. Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Jess, good to see you. Thank you.
Janine Thought?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I just wanted to talk quickly about something that I feel is one of the more pressing nonpartisan issues that we've been dealing with in the district, and that's the mental health of our children. I've come up here before and talked about the new school counselors at JFK, and I just wanted to expand on that a little. During the pandemic, mental health emergency visits have increased by 30%, and 71% of parents feel that the pandemic has taken a toll on their children's mental health. That's not solely because of the masks or the shutdown, but it's a combination of factors: unpredictable routines, family stress, trauma from the loss of a family member, fewer social interactions. And then on top of that, we do have a shortage of pediatric mental health providers. This is not something that will be fixed by the end of the school or the budget year, and the ripple effects will be felt long into the future of this pandemic. So I understand that the ramifications of how a pandemic has affected the families in the district can be difficult to understand for maybe some of the older tax-paying constituents in the community, but I promise you, if we invest in the mental health and continue to teach not just academics, but to the whole person and the individuality of each of our students, they will benefit tenfold. And I applaud the board and Mr. Harrison for incorporating the district's new hiring of mental health professionals into the future budget once the federal grant runs out. And yet I think that there is still some more that we can do to help our kids. I feel like there's still an opportunity to broaden the use of mental health professionals in our schools. And I think that we need to focus on fostering an inclusive, caring environment, starting with our youngest elementary students, no matter what they look like, who their parents are, what their social economic status is, or what trauma they may have endured. You're welcomed, loved, and supported in our classrooms. This looks like diversity in books, representation in teachers, and celebrations of all religions, cultures, and belief systems. This looks like clubs such as the GSA club in the high school, or a banana splits program in the elementary schools, which unfortunately we do not have. This looks like special lessons in Black and Latino History Months. The students of this district should feel empowered, empathic, and connected to improve their self-esteem and mental fortitude. Sports are also a great outlet, and I'm a proponent of expanding some of our physical fitness clubs, but I recognize that they're not for everybody. And every student should be able to find their niche, their micro-community, and develop a support system outside of the home, which is equally critical for belonging and optimal mental health. Finally, our students can and should be learning strategies for resilience and stress reduction, just like they learn that physical exercise is good for the body. It's also good for the mind, along with mindfulness and movement practices. Our elementary students unfortunately lack specific health education curriculum at this point, and that's something that I'd love to see added in the future. Our children must learn these skills as life skills. They're as important as math or history to set them up for success for their future endeavors. I don't have all the answers, but we should be listening to teachers and the students to see what they need, as well as reaching out to organizations that specialize in teaching that can support the social and emotional health of our kids. And I hope we can continue to keep this a priority in our schools and grow these programs. Thank you.
Ms. Thorpe, thank you very much. And I can tell you we're talking about some of those things. I'm not at liberty really to say it now at this point, but thank you very much for bringing that to the table.
Andrea, back here?
There are many subjects I'd like to bring up, but in 3 minutes, it's impossible. Let me just say this, because this is important when we're talking about the budget. This is directly from the audit report in 2020. Due to the repeated operating surpluses, the district did not use appropriated fund balance totaling nearly $6.9 million. Annually appropriating fund balance that is not needed to finance operations is in effect a reservation of fund balance that is not provided for in statute and circumvents the statutory limit. That means it's not within the law, it's against the law, imposed on the level of unassigned fund balance. We reviewed the district's budget for the 2015-16 through 2018-19 fiscal years and found that the district official overestimated appropriations by an average of $5.1 million each year, spending a total of approximately $20.5 million less than budgeted. This generated operating surpluses each year and increase the total fund balance by 12.9 million over the 4-year period, from 9.92 million at July of 2015 to 22 million at June 30th of 2019. If the board continues its current budgeting practices, fund balance in the general fund will continue to exceed the statutory, the legal limit, and property taxes will continue to be higher than needed to fund operations. The district expended less than budgeted, in part because the budget adopted budget with overly conservative estimates for certain appropriations. Over the 4-year period, appropriations for employee benefits were overestimated annually by an average of 2.2 million, 7.7%, teaching and by 2.9%, and the appropriations for programs for students with disability were overestimated by an average of 738,000. The district has reduced certain teaching salary employee benefits appropriates and is a 2019-20 budget, which may address some of these variances. However, the cost of employee salaries and related benefits are driven by contractual agreements and contribution rates established by and available from the retirement system. Therefore, these amounts are reasonably predictable and should not be overestimated by such significant amounts. By consistently overestimating expenditures, district officials have levied more taxes than necessary to sustain district operation and may have compromised the transparency of district finances. I have not seen any change in this behavior. If anything, it's probably worse than it was. $22 million, was it then 25 million? Is it 30 million now? You are loading up the budget unnecessarily, and the people are paying way more taxes than they should. I'll just finish with, here's a little quote that I have. We used to put on our flyer. This is right from one of our flyers, by the way. Teacher salaries are such a significant part of total educational budget, and Long Island teacher salaries are so far above the state and national averages that any meaningful reduction in the tax burden must include changes in this area. That was said in 1990 by a Long Island Association report. 1990. And here we are, worse off than ever, and it's unfortunate. What you are doing is wrong. Overtaxing people is wrong, and you have to stop it.
Ms. Vecchio, you keep referring back to this article from 4 or 5 years ago. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to you about it.
5 years ago, no, this was 2020.
As far as the 2015-16, at the end of the year, the school cannot spend more than what the community approves. So at the end of the year, we're always going to have something left over. So it was referring to 4 years where we took $5 million out of our budget. At the end of the year, we had $5 million left, and we put it back into the reserves. And did that over 4 years. Excuse me, I let you speak. I let you speak. Okay? Okay, so every year we took $5 million out of the budget, and every year we put $5 million back. And it's the same $5 million for 4 years, and the state does, and Newsday does an article that we overtaxed by $20 million. It doesn't make any sense. So, you know,
I don't think any of it has been corrected.
You don't think any of it has been corrected? Did you pay attention to Mr. Harrison's presentation this evening? Did you see that in 2021 you were paying less in school taxes than in 2013? Did you get that information
We've
from Mr.
been
Harrison?
paying too much in school taxes for decades already.
Did you see that they were lower in 2021 than they were in 2013? Can you even believe that that's possible?
When we are losing students every year, our taxes should be going down. Explain that to me.
They did.
You
They
can't.
did, you just don't
can't.
believe it. But that's okay.
It's okay. No, it's not okay.
It is okay, because
And you're not
everybody else
representing the
believes
people- the
in
people who
the
need to be
stats.
represented.
Okay, you can't get yourself to believe that we did $60 million worth of work here, and your taxes went down, and we added cosmetology, we gave every kid a computer. You can't believe it.
All right,
But
explain to me
hopefully enough
why-
people do to
explain
vote for the
to me
budget.
why our interest, the interest that we pay per year in the budget, for the same amount, it used to be $6 million a year, that part of the budget. and now it's 9 million. On
Interest on what?
essentially the same borrower. So you can't explain that to me. I don't understand it.
All I know is if your taxes went down over an 8-year period, but that doesn't make you happy. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know what else we could do for you. But
Yeah,
thank you, have a good night.
What you're doing is wrong,
Stephanie?
and it's just a shame that the people apparently don't care.
Garrett Peterson? Our next speaker.
Tough act to follow, Mr. Peterson.
I'll manage. Before I touch on the budget, as a member of the Long Range Planning Committee, we have been talking about technology and expanding club access, and one of the things I do professionally is rolling out technology in an educational adjacent setting. And we were discussing maybe using our Parent Square service, to maybe survey the parents and the students to see what clubs might be of interest, because I know that was a situation that Mr. Dolan was talking about. We don't necessarily know what the kids might be interested in ahead of time, so maybe that would be a thing that we could use to kind of target activities, things like that.
Just as a cautionary thing, I mean, and I think this should be talked about before we talk about it publicly. Let's talk about it in the committee.
Sure.
But one of the things we're starting to see is clubs are a beautiful thing, because it's when a child's passion and a teacher's passion outside the classroom come together. So we do. We'll talk about this in the committee, but like I said, we are starting to see some very nice new things. And I want to say to Mrs. Thorpe, you put that nicely. One of the things I'm really proud of with this, the administrative team, is we recognize that there has to be a balance. We want to provide all the programs we can for kids, but we know that the well is not bottomless.
Of course.
And the team has found very cost-effective ways. Mr. Zachary said it very well. Your taxes in 2021 were a little lower. My school taxes certainly aren't. I live right next door in a neighboring district. But if you look at the complete transformation of the facility, and the facility was in dire need of repair, and now we have turned full attention to the academics, and we also are doing it cautiously, because if we tell our kids that COVID crippled them, well, they'll curl up in a ball and watch cartoons. But if we work wisely together, parents, school, and we have programs that challenge our kids, and one of the biggest things is we want to make sure they can read, because if you can read, all the research shows everything else falls together.
It's something I do at home. So
but we are servicing and providing education for kids in a public school setting with their peers that 20 years ago we didn't see them, we didn't have them, and they weren't on our books. So I am very, very proud. If you look at Mr. Harrison's charts and you look at what we've been able to do, and so that's something we should certainly talk about in the committee, so we can present it to the
I just
public.
wanted to plant the seed ahead of time.
No, you
gotta
it's
plant
like
the seed, and then
you like
let
putting
it
me on the
grow.
spot. No, that's okay.
It's like it's killing me here. I personally don't have an issue with this. Broadly speaking, inflation over the last 10 years has been between 1.8 and 2.4%. And over the last 10 years, the annual increase on this is lower than that. So, in broad terms there, good job. I'm also never going to complain because you guys are more conservative with your budgeting than maybe other people are. That seems like fiscal responsibility to me. So that's a thing. Horace Mann, founded probably in a lot of ways modern American public education, and since then, it's a core part of the American social contract. Everybody pays in, everybody contributes, and we get a better society as a result. Previous generations paid in for their kids, and now everybody should be paying in for my kids' generation, and that's how we have a society. I don't think that's a particularly controversial subject, and I think a broad majority of the people who live here, given that the budget has passed year after year, don't have an issue with it, to be perfectly honest. So,
Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Josh Zussman?
Good evening.
Good evening. First, I want to thank the board administration for their attention to the budget. I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had sent an email a few weeks ago to the board administration, and while I thank the district for a prompt response, I was less than satisfied with the answers that I received. I know you're all very surprised. I had 3 issues that I mainly discussed in my email. First, I'd asked after our trade programs at the high school. I couldn't find any listings on our district website. Mr. Dolan was kind enough to send next year's course offerings to me and explain that programs are discussed with rising seniors and their parents during scheduling meetings. First, I do hope that the forthcoming new website that you talked about presents its information clearly to current and prospective members of our community. My point of concern is the statement that this applies to rising seniors. I reviewed the BOCES catalog and noted the course offerings available to districts in Suffolk County. By stating this, this means that the 8 listed 2-year programs, complete with career-ready certifications, are unavailable to our students, including aviation, cosmetology, culinary arts, plumbing, heating, electrical trades. Further, 14 other courses are offered as 1- or 2-year courses, although the appearance is that the greatest values of the content as it pertains to graduating career-ready comes from exploring both years of the offering. These include certified personal trainer, fashion merchandising, welding, and so on. Thus, out of the diverse list of offerings, we're limiting our students to really only 7 out of the 29 courses of study. This doesn't strike me as a serious stance on trades. Go ahead.
Should we go one at a time so I don't get confused? We are actually currently, we had said we were active participants in BOCES, and we went away from BOCES around 2008, 2007 for budgetary reasons. When we decided, we made a conscious decision to begin back with BOCES. We made a conscious decision not to rush so that we could build interest and make sure it's affordable. BOCES is a wonderful program, and stay tuned because we believe, not next year but the year after, we'll be ready to be full in back with BOCES. But there will be some caveats and there will be some contingencies. But we're working on a plan. But we agree with you. BOCES is important. We're currently speaking to our neighboring districts also, because they've come up with some very creative ways to make sure that we can do BOCES, and we're assessing what is legitimately the desire, okay, and how many students. But we have people working on it as we speak, and there'll be more to come in the coming months. But suffice it to say that we understand that BOCES, we appreciate BOCES, and we want to be part of BOCES, and we want to return to being all in BOCES, but we do not want to rush into it and then have to pull out again. So, but it's coming.
It's good to have a plan.
We agree with you,
As long as
Josh.
we're not limiting to just the seniors.
You're right.
All right. I'm going to skip my second issue just for the sake of brevity. But I also shared my concerns with the district as it pertains to policy, procedure, and culture. We do not, in my opinion, have a culture wherein we follow a policy or procedures. Not really. Last quarter, in a decision that showed some forward thinking in terms of modern pedagogy, as well as in light of the situation of staff and student quarantine, Mr. Dolan stated that there will be no midterm exams. If you fast forward to the next week, we have students in the middle school who are instructed to cross off the word midterm and write quarter 2 exam next to it. When I studied school district leadership, one of my professors defined culture as how we do things around here. Culture starts at the top, and we need a board and upper administration setting a tone where we work as one district instead of just talking the talk. We see the same problem with technology. Google Classroom, Infinite Campus, technology at East Islip, we don't utilize it as a culture. Don't get me wrong, we pay for these things. We paid for Google Classroom, we paid for IC, we paid for laptops, we deliver them to all students, and we pat ourselves on the back for it. But where's the policy about assignment and assessment posting on Google Classroom? Why is the district still paying for agenda books that don't arrive on time? We don't need them. Where's the policy for posting club meeting schedules universally? Where is our culture in doing this? Similarly, all of our kids are going to have serious back problems by or before the end of high school if we keep this up. My kids and a lot of their friends have to carry 2 binders for notebooks, folders, and paper, and their laptops. Sometimes they're charging cables if they've neglected to charge overnight.
And I don't know that we planned enough to have spare chargers in each classroom. I know the library we do, but classrooms I don't believe we do. Should a laptop be dead and needed for a test or for classwork? Mr. Dolan thankfully again replied that we do things not in policy but in practice and as teachers see fit within their delivery instruction. And that's fine, but that's exactly my point. We need to set priorities and process at the district level. We establish a culture to ensure that we do have some universal priorities. I have a hard time zipping up my daughter's backpack on the day she's unable to do it herself, and there's very little reason we don't have something like a half-inch binder with loose leaf, 6 folders, the ELA novel, and a laptop. We have one-to-one devices, we have software packages, we have email, we can coordinate with one another. 2 years ago was a difficult year for everyone. This year is done from a planning perspective. Next year, let's please coordinate like it's 2022 and start setting a culture that we can really be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, but the BOCES, we agree with you. We're looking into expanding that and offering to more students, absolutely. It's very important, so thank you. Is that all?
Yes.
Okay. The next Board of Education regular business meeting will be held on Thursday, April 14th, 2022 at 8 p.m. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
All in favor? All right. Let's go Tar Heels Saturday. Hope to see you guys Monday night.